Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is Weaponized CAD. I'm your host Danny. We are talking about lines today, just straight lines, distance between 2 points, basic stuff. However, as we are drawing these lines and I show you the different ways to go about drawing lines, we're going to run into some things that need to be discussed for further down the road. So I gave you, in the last episode, I gave you the user interface. In this episode, we're going to get more into the details of things that aren't on the user interface, things that you run across as you're going. So as we're drawing lines, there's going to be things that come up, separate windows, separate menus. So for the line command, which is literally the home tab up here at the top, and it is the first button in the first panel. This is the draw panel. First button in the draw panel of the ribbon is the line command. We're going to click line, and we're going to notice down in the command line, specify first point. All this is asking for is where you want to start your line. Now you're going to notice that following my cursor is a set of coordinates. It's XY coordinates. If we wanted to start a line from a specific point in XY space, we can do that. Otherwise, we can just click anywhere we want. So I'm going to left click. And as I drag the line away, or drag the cursor away, you're going to notice a couple of things here. First of all, down in the command line, it says line, specify next point, or undo. You'll notice that undo is shaded. That means that you can either type U, enter, which is highlighted blue. I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to see it. In these later versions of AutoCAD, they actually made these buttons down here clickable. So every so often you're going to run into a command that has a series of subcommands. Undo is going to undo back to as far as you want, really. You can click the undo command and get all the way back to the point that we're at right now. It's not going to undo you out of the command. It's only going to undo any line segments you've drawn all the way back to the starting point here. So as we pull the cursor away, there is a number that is on top of the cursor in the dashed dimension that's sitting parallel to the line segment. And then below that is the angle that the line is being drawn at. So what we can do is, say we needed to draw a 45-degree line. We can get the cursor up so the angle is showing us 45 degrees, and let's say we wanted to make that 10. All I'm doing is typing on the numpad 10. If we wanted to make it 100, if we wanted to make it 1,000, we can make it 1. I'm going to make it 1. And what it's going to do is it's going to draw a line segment that is 1 unit long at 45 degrees. And then from there we can continue on. So let's say we need to draw a line at 8 degrees at 10 this time. There it is. So as I'm keying these numbers in, keying these distances in, all I'm doing is typing in the number and hitting enter. And you'll notice what's happening down on the bottom on the command line. Specify first point. Our first point was here. Specify next point or undo. We typed 1, and we had the cursor controlling where the line is going in XY space by using that angled dimension, that ghosted angled dimension above and below the cursor itself. And then we drew our line at 10. Now, if you want to get out of the line command, you have a number of options. You can either hit the escape key, which in the last episode bails you out of any command you are in. You just bang the escape key once or twice and you're out. Or you can right click and it's going to exit you out of the command. It's not going to tell you it exited you out of the command. It's just going to go back to type a command. So now all we have is our cursor. Now, before we go into that, we have to go back into our options and we have to go to the user preferences tab, and there's Windows standard behavior. Now, the way that I have mine set up, and I probably should have done this first, we're going to cover it right now. We're not too far into it. It's fine. Double click editing is automatically turned on. Shortcut menus in drawing area is automatically turned on, but the right click customization button is very important. If you click on right-click customization, it's automatically going to be checked, turn on time-sensitive right-click. What this lets you do is quick click for enter, enter being end the command, end the segment of the command that we're in. In the line case, enter ends the command. So escape key ends the command, enter ends the command. Or longer click to display shortcut menu. And I set my longer click duration to 250 milliseconds because that gives me enough space between wanting to end a command or getting to the menu that I'm about to show you. So I believe this number here in milliseconds starts at 50. I may be wrong. I might have to reset my AutoCAD and go back and look at what the actual number is. I made mine 250 so I can right click to end and start and end commands, which I'll show you. I need to show that to you too. But 250 milliseconds gets you past that right click enter and allows it to know that, okay, he didn't just right click quickly, he's actually holding right click, show him the menu. And then down here, the edit mode, if one or more objects are selected, right click means repeat last command, which is also what the enter button does, or shortcut menu. So this is turned on, 250 milliseconds. I'm going to click apply and close, apply and OK. So now, if I were to hit enter or right click, if you watch down on the command line, because I was just in the options, it automatically refired the options. It's going right click when you have no command active is going to refire the previous command. So if you're drawing line from point, and you hit right click to close the line command, if you right click quickly again, it will restart the line command, and you can start the line from wherever you want. So right click, having that delay between right click enter and right click menu is very important because you don't always want the menu and you don't always want enter. You want a nice break based on how long you're holding or not holding the right click to get to different pieces of the command. So like I said, I right clicked quickly and it brought up the options. Now if I hold right click, you'll notice that this menu pops out. And right up at the top, you have the repeat options, which is the most previous command you run. Then there's also recent input, which gives you a list of all of the recent commands you've run. So before I started the video, I was using mtext to do some editing. I did a save as, I drew a polyline or a P line, I erased something, I zoomed, I drew the line in this video, and I showed you the options. Next one down is clipboard, cut, copy, copy with base point. You can do all of these with Control-C, Control-V, Control-Z to undo. You have the isolate ability, which we're not going to talk about right now. Undo options would just undo whatever we set in the options. So even if we changed something in the options, we can actually undo what we changed. If we checked something, if we changed the milliseconds from 50 to 250 and then hit undo, it would change the milliseconds back to 50. You can also get to pan, zoom, and the steering wheel. Action recorder I don't use. Sub-object selection filter I don't use. Quick select is very important, but we're not going to cover that right now. Quick calc just brings up a calculator. Find allows you to search your drawing for any text. And then options, which is the same thing as up here. So even though we typed in options, we could have just held right click and gone down to the bottom and gotten to the same options. We've drawn two line segments. Let's go back to line. You know what? We're going to use the keyboard this time. Line command, L, enter. Now, what you just noticed, I'm going to escape out of that and show you again. When I hit L, this is called the dynamic input. So while you're moving your cursor around, there's this ghost command line that's attached to the crosshair. You can turn it off. It's a button down here at the bottom, which you would find in the hamburger menu. This is something that a lot of people use, some people don't. I prefer to not use it because I'm mostly keyboard commands and I don't need this hanging me up. But if I type L, it's actually going to search all the commands that start with L or have L in them right there on the cursor. And all I'm doing is mouse wheel down, mouse wheel up. So because I wanted line, I can click line. I'm going to escape again. I'm going to hit L, enter, which also starts the line command. So you have a number of different ways to do each thing. You have your line button up here in the ribbon. You have L, enter. Let's draw another line. Let's draw a line from this point. We're just going to pick an arbitrary point here. And we want to snap it to the end of this line. Now, you'll notice that there's a green box that shows up right on my cursor. And it even says what it's doing. So when I get close, actually, you can probably go here. That is your O snap or your object snap. And if you hold it long enough, it tells you that it's on the endpoint right there on the end of the cursor. The object snaps, let me escape out of this. Our object snaps are F3, and they're down here in the bottom. If we hit F3, it's going to turn object snap off. If we hit F3 again, it's going to turn them on. But what I didn't mention in the UI tutorial is if you right-click on that button and go to Object Snap Settings, this is giving you all of the different snaps that you can set. Now, a snap means if you're drawing something and you need it to only jump to the end point of any line segment, any polyline segment, the end of an arc, you can uncheck everything in here and tell it all I want it to do is snap to the endpoints of objects. Or you can turn on endpoint, you can turn on the midpoint of a line segment, the midpoint of an arc, midpoint of a polyline segment, center of a circle. A node is a single point in AutoCAD. A quadrant would be north, south, east, west on a circle, and that also works on arcs. Intersection is at any point where two objects cross each other. It will find that crossing point and snap the cursor to that crossing point. So let's do this. I'm going to turn on endpoint and midpoint, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go back into my line command using L, enter. I want to snap to the midpoint of this line. Each snap, each object snap, O snap, has a different glyph that pops up. So the endpoint snap is a green square. The midpoint snap is a green triangle. And depending on which snap you're using, they all look a little bit different, which is good because if you have a lot of O snaps turned on by going down here and right-clicking on your snaps, or you can actually just check through them here, unless you wanted to go in and take a look at them. There's a couple different menus in here that we're not really going to touch right now. Snap and grid, polar tracking, 3D object snap, dynamic input. This drafting settings menu is separate from the options, but that button down at the bottom, options, brings you to it. So anyway, what I was saying is that since we have endpoint and midpoint snaps selected, we're going to draw a line again, and we're going to snap it to the midpoint of this line segment, and we're going to know it's the midpoint because if you hold the cursor there for, I think it's less than a second. AutoCAD deals in milliseconds. It's going to tell us that we're on the midpoint. So even if I were to click here off of the actual midpoint, watch what happens to the line segment. It automatically snaps the starting point of our line segment to that midpoint of this line segment here. So we're just gonna draw something out in space here. If I'm going around and creating an object that needs to close on itself, if you look down here in the command line, at any point after you have two line segments, so you cannot close one line segment, it would close back on itself, it would double the lines up, and you'd end up running into trouble later on. If you have two line segments, down in the bottom, you can either hit C, enter to close the object, or you can just click close. Now what close is going to do is it's going to remember where you started your line command, which was here at this midpoint. If I were to click close, it's going to automatically draw that last segment and close it perfectly on itself. If we could zoom into this, 100 million times, and these two line segments here would be connected perfectly. Which is going to lead us into another discussion. When I select one of these line segments, you're going to notice blue squares. These are called grips. Your grips are very important. Every object has grips. Doesn't matter if it's a circle, doesn't matter if it's it could be an array. An array has grips. Fillets have grips. Any drawing object in AutoCAD will have grips. There are a few cases where you don't have grips, but they're few and far between, and we're probably not going to ever discuss them. What these grips let you do is manipulate objects without having to use any of the modify tools up here. So let's say we wanted to grab this line segment from the midpoint grip. So because it's a line segment, it's going to have a start, a middle, and an end. If we grab from the middle grip, it's going to move the entire object. If you're in the middle of this and you hit escape, it throws the line back where it was, because according to AutoCAD, you haven't actually dropped it anywhere new, so it's going to go back to where it started. And if you notice down in the command line, when I grab that midpoint grip, it's actually using the stretch command, which in the past gave all AutoCAD users a headache because the stretch command is kind of a pain, but they incorporated the stretch command into the grips themselves. So I grab the midpoint grip, I'm moving it away, I'm going to hit escape because I want to grab a different grip. I'm going to grab this endpoint grip. It's going to reactivate the stretch command, and I'm pulling this endpoint grip out. And what I can do is I can just snap it to anything that I want to. So I'm going to snap it to that endpoint. I'm going to use my green dashed selection, which is the crossing selection. I'm going to grab this grip here. I'm going to pull it down there. I'm going to snap to that endpoint. I'm going to grab this grip here, and I'm going to snap it to the midpoint of that line. I'm going to grab this grip here, and I'm going to snap it there. So what you'll notice is that all objects with these grips can be manipulated in any which way. Now, I showed you how to move objects, endpoints from the midpoints on single objects. When I click a single object and I grab this grip and pull it out of the way, all of this information here remains intact. I'm going to hit U, enter to undo. I'm going to grab this line and this line. Now watch what happens when I grab this grip and pull it. It's going to pull both objects, because according to AutoCAD, these two grips, there's a grip at the end point of this line and a grip at the end point of this line, and they're coincident. So by clicking one with both line segments selected, you're moving both at the same time. Same thing goes if I were to window all three of these. I can move all three. I can move this here now because this is the midpoint grip of this line segment, and this is the end point of this line segment. Watch what happens. Because like I said, if you grab the midpoint of a line segment, it's going to move the entire line. Because this line, its endpoint is coincident with this midpoint, it's moving both. So really, with lines, that's all we're going to discuss right now. There are tons and tons of things that you can do to modify lines. We're going to get into probably polylines next because they're second on the list in the draw panel. Lines are great when you just need to quickly throw something onto a drawing. Line from here, here, draw a box, draw a triangle, shoot some lines off the side. They're very easy to throw in and get rid of quickly. They're not smart objects. Polylines are a lot smarter and can do a lot more. So for this line demonstration, that's pretty much it. We covered the right-click menu that pops up. We covered the O-snaps. We covered how to draw lines. I showed you grips. We actually went into the options and changed our right-click settings. So like I said, these are going to be hot and fast. And it's not to overwhelm you. It's just to get you to understand each individual thing in tight little groups, and then at the end, we're just going to build something crazy. So thanks everybody for watching. This is Weaponized CAD. I'm your host, Danny, and I'll see you in the next one.